It's the Hoffman Show on a Tuesday here on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Producer Anthony Haney riding shotgun as usual. Anthony, I'm not going to lie. I didn't have like any Tuesday vibes till you played the intro. And now I'm like, oh God, is this about to be a disaster? Is this about to Tuesday all over us? No, I think we're just gonna plow ahead. I think we're gonna have a good day. I think we're just gonna have a great show. I'm feeling good. I like our rundown today. I like our rundown for the rest of the week. I like where we're at. And I like that tomorrow you and I get to go to a football practice. Everyone listening can join us starting Thursday. Commanders training camp open to the public. There's fancy new stands, which is very exciting. So we'll be out there that day as well. But we have things to talk about starting tomorrow, which means there are questions to be asked. What are we going to be looking at today? And, well, of course, our answers are interesting, but far more interesting are the answers of Ron Rivera. Rivera will be heard live on this radio station at 4:45 today. Not just this radio station. No. This radio show. Yes. Ron Rivera's press conference to open training camp live at 4:45 here on the Team 980, which, of course, begs the question of us, if we were there instead of here, what would we be asking? I think the number one question that's pretty obvious to ask, Ant, is how's the new boss? Because what I think we saw, even to an extent with the stands, right? These bleachers that have been put in that look fantastic. Like, it looks like a real NFL caliber facility, as opposed to the, hey, you got a bunch of fans on a hill. Cool. You have like this actual bleacher setup situation out there. Is clearly Jason Wright and his team on the business side, with whatever input they needed from the football side, have been working on these kinds of things for months. But it takes a green light and a check to actually get them done. And so something like the bleachers for the fans, that's something they can turn around fairly quickly. They probably have been ordered. You know, perhaps there was some way to back channel getting clearance for them. Like, don't worry, we'll pay for it. Or they order it and the check is due when upon delivery. Oh, delivery is going to be after the ownership change. Well, what do you know? Hey, Josh, we need the check. We ordered this thing. I don't know how that goes down on the background. I'm just, throwing it out there that, like, these are ideas that clearly are not new ideas because they happen in other places around the NFL. It's just that someone like Dan Snyder has never greenlit them before. They weren't a part of the budget. And for Josh Harris, he has made it perfectly clear his 3 pillars of success for the 2023 season are football success, repairing the relationship with and engaging with the community, and the fan experience. And because the fan experience is one of the big 3 pillars, things like this are going to happen. But how does that, as that happens and we see it more on the fan experience side, surely Rivera's got a wish list too. So my first question to Ron would be, now that Harris has been on the job for a couple of days, what are the things that you have been able to accomplish that perhaps have been held up? Whether it's, equipment, whether it's the way things are organized, whether it's contract discussions, how's the new boss treating you? And that would be my number one question. Anthony, do you have a different number one question that you would ask Ron Rivera if you were attending this press conference this afternoon, as opposed to hitting a button so that the listening public could hear it?
The first question for Ron, for me,
if that's my first question, what's your second question?
Yeah, because I like the ownership question. I would probably just ask Ron how he spent the summer, to be honest, start off slow and then get into the hard-hitting questions, the Sam Howells, the Chase Young, things of that nature. But also I would want to know about these late signings that we've had. Like, why go out and get Byron Pringle? Why go out and get Michael Badgley? What also took so long to end up, releasing Andrew Norwell? So I'll probably look along what they did in the offseason, following up your question about the owners.
Yeah, I think the signings one is obvious. It's kind of an order of business that needs to get taken care of. My guess is, like, they probably had a guy like Pringle circled for a while as he remained available. And they were like, obviously Bieniemy knows him. from Kansas City, wide receiver, backup receiver in Kansas City, for those that don't know, got signed this afternoon. And I still would not expect him to make the roster, but it's another guy who knows the playbook. Good to have around. But you also need a roster spot. And so when Andrew Norwell gets released, you all of a sudden have it. But they also do bring in this kicker who has been more accurate on extra points in his career than Sly has, although kind of the same on field goals, but he's way, way, way down the list in terms of leg strength, where Sly is one of the best, which obviously not only affects long-distance field goals, but he can't even kick the ball out of the end zone. Now, I also wonder, though, this year with the new rule changes, like, how big of a factor is that? You don't have to kick the ball through the end zone to get a touchback anymore. If you pop it up at the 5-yard line, it's either touchback or chaos. And I think teams might opt for chaos, or at least an attempt at chaos, that a kick returner gets impatient. So I think those are all good ones. Obviously, we'll hear the actual questions coming up at 4:45. Anthony, we had Take Command slated here. I'll tell you what, let's come up with a few more questions for Rivera, and let's also get some input. We did this last week with questions for Josh Harris, and it went pretty well. So let's go ahead and let's hit the phones. 301-230-0980. Your questions, if you could go to the Ron Rivera press conference that you will hear live at 4:45, 301-230-0980. Then we'll cut down the clip of Take Command and play it for you at 4:30. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Hope that you are having a fantastic Tuesday. You'll hear Ron Rivera coming up at 4:45 live from the podium in Ashburn. Your reaction to what the head coach has to say afterwards. Big, long opening press conference. We have it all for you live here on the Team 980. What questions would you ask if we said, hey, we're going to give you a press pass. We're gonna credential you up. You get to go represent the Team 980. You get to ask questions. Yes, you in the front there. You in the front. I don't know why I became a British PR person, but that's fine. What questions do you got? 301-230-0980. Let's go to Paulie to get us started. Paulie, what's up, man?
How you doing, Craig? Hail to the W, man.
Doing well, bro.
To the W. Hey, all right. Okay, I got a two-part question.
Everyone always does. I'm so guilty about it.
Okay. All right, so I would say this. Coach Rivera, this is 757 Paulie here for the Water Boys. I would like to know, first question I have for you, do you sense the pressure from the fan base that this is a put-up or shut-up year for you, that you either get our team to the playoffs, 10 wins and a playoff win, or you going to be out the door, or are you taking it as business as usual? And my second question is this truly going to be a quarterback competition, or is the fix in for Sam Howell? And I'll take that on. Thank you, Coach Rivera. Hail to the W.
Paulie, great questions. Thank you for the call. I will do my best. I'm not going to go full character play like I did last week with the Josh Harris questions, but I'll do my best to say what I think he would say. On the do you feel the pressure from the fan base? I think Ron would be extremely political while saying yes. He would say two main parts to his answer. One, I always feel the pressure of the fan base. We have great fans. They've been patient for a long time. They want us to win, and we know that we need to deliver. So there'd be some version of that, which is both correct but also a very political answer. The other part of that is, I think if he was being even more transparent, he would say, I've been around this league long enough. I've been in a new ownership situation where, my time was ultimately limited. I'm trying to win every single day with everything that I do. I also understand where my contract is, where I've got, one more year after this, and that's typically a decision type of year. And with a new owner, I understand what's expected of me. Ultimately, I'm going to go out and try my best every day, and the results will be what they are. And then it's Josh's call, which, by the way, is correct. Rivera can't say at the podium, if I make the playoffs, I'm good. And then Harris is like, well, he said it. Because that might not be the standard. I don't think Josh is going to put forth a standard. You don't put forth a performance goal if you don't really understand what the process is going to be. Most of us anyway, I don't say most of us, a lot of folks in one of their jobs have what are called KPIs. Anthony, you ever heard of KPIs? We don't really have them over here.
Nah, I don't know what that is.
Key performance indicators.
Okay.
So if, for instance, and see, our boss has given us relatively soft versions of this. We're very, dependent on a lot of factors. I don't need to give away all our business stuff, but let's pretend for a second our boss was a hard ass about this, and he's like, your KPI is ratings. If you don't get an X.X by this date, that's a failure to hit your mark. And sometimes it is that strict. Sometimes it's like, hey, we're trying to get to this. It might be a share of revenue, or it might be a sales quota. It might be a ratings. It might be whatever it is that's applicable to your job. But that KPI standard, right, that you hit, and obviously playoffs and winning a playoff game might be it. But I think Harris is taking a very, very let's see as it goes approach. And it's not so much of hey, we got to check the vibes, but there is some vibe checking that's going to go on. If Rivera gets to a playoff win in a way that Harris doesn't really think is sustainable long term, he ain't going to keep him around. And I don't think he is going to like put out this, if this, then that, streamlined, easy to understand, very black and white, performance indicator to the point that we're going into the back end of the season definitively going, if he wins, he stays. If he doesn't, he's out. I think it's going to be how they get there. It's going to be how they work together. It's going to be how certain moves that they've made work out. Because if Ron goes and sells, for instance, Josh on this vision that Sam Howell's the future and Howell stinks and Brissett bails them out, I mean, Harris, I was listening right before we came on the air to Harris on the Adam Schefter podcast. And Adam asked him, like, how much do you know about the football team? Like the actual football. And he's like, I know what a fan knows. So he doesn't have any particular insight at this point, but he does have an idea of the discussion around everything. And he also has been paying attention for a long time. He has a pulse on the fan base because he is, for most of his life, until 4 days ago, a part of the fan base. He feels that patience that has been tested and worn thin / worn out. He has felt and seen the lack of quarterback play here over his adult life while rooting for this team. And so how this goes down, I think, is important, which brings us to Paulie's second question. By the way, Paulie, that wasn't really a two-part question. You asked two questions. There's a difference. Two-part would be, hey, what about this? And if so, that. Not question A, question A, question A. Also, question B, question B, question B. Just, if you're going to impersonate our terrible two-part questions, at least do it respectfully. That was very tongue-in-cheek. This is a radio program. I'm going to make sure people know that so they don't think I'm being highfalutin and obnoxious. Just kind of obnoxious. Anyway, point is the fix in for Sam Howell? I don't know if it's a fix. I think they're taking two different tests. I don't think Ron would say that. This is now me answering. I think they're taking two different tests. I think Jacoby Brissett is taking a veteran, like, hey, man, if you go out and crush this, you got a shot test, where Sam is taking an upside test. If you show us enough that you can grow into this job, you're the guy. But here's the thing. Like, we have data. It's not like there's no data out there. One, we have everything Brissett did last year in Cleveland, which was really, really good. And we have the other whatever number of years he's played at this point, which has included some years where he's gotten a decent amount of snaps. Indy, New England, he had some years where he got more snaps than others, etc. But we also have the entire spring where Sam was the better player to start, and I think Jacoby was the better player to finish. So that is kind of an underrated storyline going into this camp. Is I think that the quarterback competition is not open, but it's not closed either. Like, they're not going to go in and tomorrow when we're out there give Brissett a bunch of reps just haphazardly. No, he's going to be the number 2. And on Thursday, when the fans get there, he's going to be the number 2. And on Friday, the next day they practice, I think they go 3 days in a row. Or whatever the next day is, maybe it's Saturday. Brissett will be the number 2. And if Brissett is consistently the better quarterback throughout team drills, throughout individual drills, throughout everything, then eventually he'll get some 1 reps. Because really, to me, this needs to be either a full-blown competition or closed, set in stone, we're all good here, Sam's the starter, by the Baltimore practices. If you are going to use that time or if you get to that point and there isn't extreme clarity, then you're in a competition. You need to split the reps. You need to see how each of those guys does. You need to see how Howell handles it. And if it's poorly, then you go with the vet if you're really trying to win this season. Now, again, I think there's probably people listening who are like, no, just go with Sam. And if you sink, you sink. If you swim, you swim. And I, to an extent, agree with that. If I'm Ron Rivera and I'm thinking about it from a more 2023 season point of view, I can't do that. I'm like, no, Brissett's good and we can win with Brissett and we should just go win with Brissett. But I think as fans thinking long-term with Caleb Williams and Drake May and there's like 3 other dudes that could all be in the mix for top 5 quarterbacks next year on the horizon, but especially Williams, it's like, hey, man, if Sam sinks, like, hope it's to the bottom of the ocean because we got to be real bad because Arizona's going to be poopy. And beating them in a race to the bottom is going to be difficult. So if you want Williams, like, good luck. All that said, open competition, I think that's what we're looking at. Something that is fixed, I wouldn't go that far, but it's open. But the standard for it's not even the standard. I mean, it is. The standard for one is higher than the other, but it's also just that one in Sam Howell has a significant lead. So, yeah, they both got to cross the same finish line, but, Howell's got a significant head start if you want to look at it that way. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We get back. How can Eric Bieniemy protect this offensive line? That's going to be one of the big questions of this season. Logan Paulson has some thoughts. Let you hear a little bit of Take Command next here on the Team 980 before Ron Rivera live at 4:45. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We are always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Sometimes we have silly music that's just somewhere in the folder, and Anthony doesn't know what it is, and I'm guessing he played it not having a clue, and now you have a smile on your face. So you're welcome. Is that what happened?
Yes, sir.
That should almost be a credit. It's kind of a fine, but it's kind of a credit.
Afrikaan beat. That's what it is.
Yeah, it makes you happy, and that's good. Live coverage of Ron Rivera's opening press conference for training camp coming up in just 15 minutes. Right now, though, Logan Paulson was listening to, I believe it was the Ringers NFL podcast, and they had some interesting thoughts on on protection, and specifically protection in the shotgun in regards to play action, and everybody's favorite solution to the quarterback getting hit: just chip him. And the reason it was worthy enough to talk about on our podcast was because it's something that Eric Bieniemy did very, very well last year in Kansas City. And as the offensive line here in D.C. remains a massive, massive question, we dove in deep to what it means to, use running backs as chip protection. Some of the other ways in which Eric Bieniemy can be helpful. We'll pick up the conversation a little bit in the middle with diving into some of the details that we can all watch as we head out to training camp over these next couple of days. The chip help part of it, I think is pretty interesting because I feel like fans all the time, like your fan who cares about protection, the one who does more than yell, they got sacked again. The one who's like, got sacked again. Why don't they do X? The first thing they go to is like, why don't you chip?
Yeah.
But there's also a downside to that.
Correct.
Which is you are delaying your back getting out of the backfield and potentially throwing the timing of whatever you're doing off. You can't, if you get a little chip, then maybe the route's on time. You get a big chip, the back could fall over.
Right.
Sure, congrats. You have now gotten your successful contact on your chip, but 20% of your eligible receivers are no longer a factor in the down. And that's something that I remember talking about with Sean when he was here, because, keep a back, especially you keep a back in to protect.
Right.
You only get 5 eligibles. And so there's a different set of challenges that are presented here. And there are some tackles that don't really like chip help. So this is knowing your personnel as well, because it's like, hey, just leave me alone and let me do my thing.
Yep.
Versus, okay, I know the chip is coming. I can set a little farther inside. So from a concept, I was gonna say from a concept standpoint, I think these are some of the factors that don't necessarily present themselves on the surface that OCs have to think about, but the more you use them, you see the innovation, and ultimately they're mastered better. And I think that's hopefully what you're starting to see in the league.
Yeah, and so I think that's the thing is it is limiting, right? But if you think about play action pass concepts, it's like a 2-man, 3-man route combination that needs to kind of overload coverages in a specific way. So one that I saw, which I really, really liked, that Detroit ran, was basically what they call a Miami concept. So basically the receiver to the right runs a 15-yard sit. And in quarters, that safety to that side is going to attach to that, right? And that because it's in kind of that weird depth where it's not 10, it's not 20. He's got to buy it, right? And so what they did is to the other side, they run a deep post. And it's not a traditional post. It's an angle, running across the field. And so he's running that deep post on a quarter safety, right? And so that other side of the field is completely open. The problem is that this is a very long developing concept. So how do you get to it, right? So what Detroit did is they work a slide protection. So they slide the offensive line right, which helps the offensive line. So that right tackle gets slide help. You have the tight end off the ball, sift back across the formation and chip the defensive end with running back help. And so you are kind of in this weird max pro, but because the back's there to help the tight end, the back can get out to the flat and have flat control for this other route concept over. It's basically a curl, right? So if I was going through the routes, it's deep sit, post, curl, chip to the flat, right? So you are gaining a 2-level throw to the left there if you need it, but it is happening later in the down. You're really trying to hit the home run here to this deep post. And that protection works great because you're helping the right tackle, you're helping the left tackle, and you're helping the tight end. And so you've allowed Jared Goff enough vision to the field to make this throw. And it's not off a play action. It's on 3rd and 10. And you've added what Mike McDaniel says is you've added a hitch, right? So you've gotten back there. I've done my 5-step drop, or it's 3-step from the gun, and I can hitch, and I can hitch one more time and launch this football down the field just because of this protection design, right? So just chipping is not the answer. I need a well-reasoned concept that is going to get open on the second hitch. If I don't do that, like let's say, for example, like Scott Turner did this a ton last year, and I know he's not here anymore. This is not like a rain on Scott Turner parade here, but like when you run 3 verticals, right? Because we just talked about 3 eligible receivers. They came up with this concept called Miami, I'm going to call it, right? They run 3 verticals into the teeth of the defense. There is no conflict for the defense. Like if you're in cover 3 and you're running verticals, those corners are just going to get really deep with those verticals. The post safety is going to stay right there, and there's no conflict. So I could chip all day. I could chip a million times. I could, like the quarterback could chip. I don't know, right? Like there's no way that they're going to get open versus that coverage. You need like a well-reasoned pass concept that manipulates the coverage you're expecting and gives the quarterback an opportunity to throw the football.
Right. Well, and it also accounts for the timing differences and things that I talked about, right? If that
Yes.
check or if that chip player is the last player in the progression,
Right.
Even they could fall down while chipping and still get up and probably still get open. Occasionally that doesn't happen. Your quarterback has to eat it, but it is what it is. But you've also, like you said, you've created some real issues for the defense that hopefully it's a smarter route concept. So that was one of the things that I think, where the innovation helps, right? You think of some of the problems with some of the things that we're talking about in the past, the innovation solves the problem. So the next problem that I would raise that has been an issue in the past with this concept being a large term here that we're talking about, is play action out of the gun typically hasn't been very effective.
No.
Play action when the quarterback does not turn their back and like really, show the ball, typically doesn't actually get the bite that you're after. The token fakes don't have the same effect on the defense. Now, the problem with we want to run play action, our quarterback needs to turn his back to the defense, is your quarterback's turning his back to the defense. When he turns around, he's got to create a picture versus, I'm riding this fake and getting to scan while I ride the fake. How have teams gotten around that to make it worthwhile to have the play action in the first place?
Yeah. So I think that, it's a really, really good question. So let's just start with like what we were just talking about with like chip help, right? So when I'm running these like deep play action concepts with chip help, right, I'm not getting the same draw from the linebackers or on the linebackers. I'm not putting them in conflict in the same way. So as a quarterback, I have to understand, and this is obviously coaching, right? They're going to get some depth. And then all of a sudden those chip players, which are kind of, forgotten thoughts in most people's offenses, become your primary read. So you'll see like with Kansas City, for example, like if Mahomes is a magician, right, that he can fit balls wherever they need to go. But let's say he can't, he'll check the ball down to like Isaiah Pacheco for like a 15-yard gain and a first down, because everybody's gotten under these like deeper, longer developing concepts. So that's one thing. Also, like you look around, you see like, oh, like you've got these token fakes now, right? But how you run the fake is also important. So like, for example, when I was prepping for this, I was watching Cincinnati, and they brought the tight end in motion to kind of a fullback spot, had him ISO on the linebacker. That token fake all of a sudden has some more teeth to it, just by giving it a little bit more action. So the linebacker comes up and fits the tight end. The back doesn't even touch the football. The fake is terrible. But I remember when I was with Kyle, he used to say something like, it's not the action necessarily. It's what they're seeing from the combinations up front. That's the thing that kind of like is the Pavlov's dogs thing. It like just triggers the linebacker, right? So if that's good, and on this fake, like the fake is terrible, the ball fake's terrible, but the action's really strong, then you get T. Higgins on a dig where that linebacker is supposed to be, and it's an easy completion for Joe Burrow, right? So like they are finding ways to increase and improve the actions, those kind of token fake actions from the backfield. Like I think another one is Mahomes and Kansas City. They'll run like a jet sweep action, and they'll just kind of, the quarterback's eyes are directly on the field and just have him go like run the ball with the jet sweep, and the linebackers will move. And it's like they found ways to get harder actions for the linebackers off of some different kind of looks with the play action. And I do think like when you look at Detroit, for example, or San Francisco, like we've talked about, they still run a ton of under center play action because they run the ball a ton. But it's just about when they get to that, it's like this is our haymaker. We got to hit it. right? We got to ensure that we hit it. And I think that's where play action, the role is kind of shifted. You're getting into, because like third down's a down you got to win. You got to be in the gun. You got to find a way to protect it. That's kind of what we're talking about. But first and second down, that play action is still a very potent weapon, I think. Does that answer your question, Greg?
Yeah. So I guess this leads to my other big bugaboo with play action, which is when teams run play action fakes off of runs they don't actually run. Because to me, that would be like the way that you get around, okay, it's a token fake, but like if it's a run you actually run and it looks the same, and no matter how good the ball fake is, if my key as a linebacker is to see this, running back taking a certain track or a tight end pulling a certain way, the guard, obviously the offensive line on a play action is going to look like they're run blocking for a second before they get into their pass sets, at least theoretically. That's how that works. If I'm reading that key and it looks like something that's run, the ball fake doesn't matter. The ball fake is the least important part of that. Right. So is that a part of what's also happening here? Is you're seeing better marry of run and pass games, and that for some reason is an innovation that a lot of offensive coordinators used to not care about. That it's like, yeah, we don't run outside zone, but the play actions off it are great, so we're going to fake it all the time. And any moderately intelligent defender could figure out that it was going to be play action. So we're going to actually cut that there. And if you want to hear Logan's response to that and the rest of that conversation, you're just going to have to go check out Take Command. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast. That episode is available now. We're cutting that short because Ron Rivera, you will hear next, the Commanders head coach, his season opening press conference live next here on the Team 980.
You can take the Team 980.
All right, it's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We are always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and they are getting going out in Ashburn. Ron Rivera speaking to the media.
Into this, and so it's kind of a unique feeling. It's exciting. I mean, I'm fired up about the opportunity as we go forward.
How can that impact a team, even for a season, something as like that, with the excitement that it's generated?
Well, a lot of it, I think, has to do with just the feeling that so many people are behind us. It was different. I mean, when you were having to deal with stuff outside of football, now it's about football. It's like I said, we're going to focus in on what's important to us, and that's playing the game. So I'm fired up about that. I am.
Ron, it's to that end, like, what was it? We talked to you obviously during the wholesale process, but what was it like for you, kind of not knowing what the future was going to be, having to assemble a roster and everything else you had to do, knowing this whole situation was happening?
Well, I think the biggest thing for us was business as usual. We stayed focused on trying to put together the best team we could. We tried to, take care of getting guys signed to the best of our ability, and we focused in on that. We knew it would be a matter of time, and when that time came, we just wanted to be ready and have everything in place. And we feel like we had a good spring, good OTAs and minicamp, and we had a good 3 day of rookie camp the last few days. So we're excited about where we are.
To the point of business as usual, you did say, though, back in somewhere earlier in the spring, that things were kind of on hold until the ownership situation came to be. What's the sort of, I know this all just happened, but what's sort of the status now with moving forward with whatever business you had, including extensions possibly for players?
Right. Well, the biggest thing is, we've had an opportunity to meet, myself with Mr. Harrison. More so than anything else, we really discussed philosophy, mine and what his and the ownership group was going to be about supporting us and being there for us. Trying to give us the tools that we need to go out and play good football and winning football. That was probably the thing that I really appreciated was having that conversation and just hearing, their commitment to trying to do the best they can to bring back to this area, a sense of pride in this organization. And that was probably one of the really good things that I really appreciated in our first conversation. And then, we plan to have more conversations as we talk about the more intricate things of our job. And that would be, as you mentioned, some of the extensions, some of the titles, about players, the future, all that kind of stuff is still conversations that we still need to have. I mean, there's still a lot of work to do. But obviously, the thing that was stressed to me from Mr. Harris and some of his other partners was this is about, job one, and that's putting together a winning football team.
Ron, as somebody who's had to be the face for so long, the last 4 years, I just wonder if you ever thought about what would it be like if I could just coach the team?
I said every time I came in and had to answer your questions that weren't football related, what would it be like just talking football? And that's what's exciting about it for me personally. The last few years I honestly felt more like a manager, trying to manage things and stuff like that. And try to keep everybody on task and on focus in terms of the game. But, the last, obviously, the spring I thought was really good. It really was, because it really was about putting the football team together, knowing that the inevitable in terms of the ownership change was happening, and so that we would be ready to go when it did happen. And so that's really been the focus as of late for us.
Did you give any thought, or have you given any thought to how your time will be used differently going forward now?
Yeah. I think, involvement, obviously, primarily on the defensive side, will increase. I mean, obviously, Jack is still the coordinator, still call all the plays and putting plans together. But, I'll be around a little bit more. And I will pop in on Eric and his guys a little bit more, and again, work with Eric, continue to mentor Eric and help him in his quest. But, those are the types of things that will, I'll be able to focus a little bit more on.
Obviously, there's this big picture, momentum, enthusiasm, optimism, vibes. A couple days from now, and it's just football, how do you get your guys to maintain that enthusiasm that, you feel throughout the city?
I think every day is going to be a different kind of day, a different kind of challenge for our guys. And a thing that I'm hoping and counting on too is that, having the fan base around, hopefully in mass, out here brings a little bit of energy. It does bring a little bit of a spark. I think that'll be something that'll help us. And then next thing you know, we'll be playing preseason games. And then after the first preseason game, we're going to go down to Baltimore. And that's going to change for a little bit, obviously, because different scenery, different opponent. We'll practice against them for a couple of days. That'll be some energy. And then after that, we'll come back. We'll play them at home. And then we'll finish up with our last preseason game. So I kind of hope that the way things are spaced, we'll continue to bring that energy, continue to have that positive flow, and we'll continue to see growth.
Some roster news with Norwell out, Pringle in. How do you feel about your roster going to camp, and are there any areas you're going to continue to really look around?
I think we feel very comfortable going in. I really do. I think we all have liked what we've done. There are some positions that guys have to grow and mature in, most notably the quarterback position. With how Sam has worked and how Jacoby has worked, I think we feel very comfortable with those guys. We like who they are. We like the development and growth. We'll be watching that one obviously very closely, and just as positions mature, a couple of young offensive linemen that got to mature, that got opportunities. Both Sam Cosme has a big opportunity to really solidify himself at guard for us. Sadiq Charles has a chance to really truly solidify himself at guard. So those will be a couple positions that we watch. The continued growth and development of our young secondary. We've got one senior guy out there with Kendall, but those young guys, we need those guys to continue to grow and come through it. I mean, this is a good young football team, which I think is positioned in a good spot.
And just quickly, did everybody pass conditioning? Were you pleased with the results? Conditioning
test was very good. We were very happy with it. As a result, there's nothing came out of it. So we're looking forward to a good full day of practice tomorrow.
Hey, Ron, this has been a big offseason, kind of full, big picture statements, big picture results. How do you try to balance, the big picture goals that you have in front of you with the day-to-day of small improvements, getting better every day, especially here early?
But that's exactly it. It's about the small improvements and getting better every day. I mean, we need to take a step every day. Every day we've got to learn and grow from what we do. I'm excited about it just because of the fact that we saw so much growth during OTAs and minicamps, and we expect it to continue. With Eric, at the helm on the offensive side, there's a lot of new things, but the guys seem to have grasped that very well. And again, we're going to count a lot on our playmakers. We want to get the ball into their hands as quickly as we can, and we want to see those things develop and grow, during training camp, and then as we get into the preseason games. So it's exciting times for us. But again, every day we want to see some positive growth.
Rivera's opening press conference here on the Team 980. This is the Hoffman Show. Back to Ashburn.
About Saquon and the Giants and just the Zoom call over the weekend. As somebody who values running the football, where do you land on this?
Well, to me, it's still an important part of the game. I mean, you need 11 players out on the field, and each guy doing their job. It's interesting because what has happened is that this has become a multi-bag league. You've got to have 2-3 guys that have an ability to share the load, and it really has changed the value where you don't have that one primary back. You have a few backs that do everything well together and work together, and in this style of offense, from what I've seen, you share the load. And that's what we want to continue. We want to be able to share the load with our playmakers, and we think we've got a good combination of running backs now.
Coach, installing a new offense, a new offensive coordinator, a new quarterback, typically seen as hurdles for any NFL team. At this stage, obviously, all of training camp to go. Do you feel like you guys are ahead of schedule? How comfortable are you with that installation process?
I think we're in a good place. I really do. I think we're starting to see the growth and development. As I said, I liked the first 3 days, and granted, it was just rookie camp, but we do expect it to continue. We're fairly optimistic. We'll continue to work, and we'll take those hurdles as they come.
Coach, sometimes coaches are like father figures to the kids, to the players. Was there a moment that you can remember seeing some of these veterans coming back that you can talk about today that maybe happened?
No, it was really cool to see them. As I was walking around the facility, and guys were walking in. you see the familiar faces, you see the guys that, that have really stepped up and have grown a lot. You've seen a couple guys that, hey, this is your opportunity, this is your chance. I mean, I try to have some sort of message ready for most of the guys. And there's a couple of them that, truly cheering for them to really take that next step. And as I mentioned, one of them was Sadiq Charles. He's a guy who's, when he's had opportunities, he's played very well, but then he's had some injuries, some nicks and stuff like that, hoping that this is, his breakthrough, his opportunity to really grasp that chance, that opportunity, and make the most of it.
This is my last ownership question. When you came here for your first year, like taking any new job, you want to prove that you belong here. Is there a little bit of that sense of, hey, I'm that new guy because I have new owners that I need to prove that I'm that guy?
Yeah. Oh, most certainly. I mean, I've got a lot to prove, because, again, I really do think we've put ourselves in a really good position. I think we're a good young football team with some key veterans and key positions, and now is the opportunity to go. And I do feel that I do want to prove some stuff.
Coach, when it comes to Bieniemy, just what has he been able to add so far to this group in terms of being a force that can bring change?
Well, first of all, he's a gregarious, big personality. He's very loud, which is kind of cool because it saves me on my voice a little bit. And he's demanding. He's got a good grasp, a good feel for what he does and what he believes in. And he's got a very direct way about him. He's got some credibility, instant credibility, for a couple of reasons. One is, first and foremost, is what he's accomplished in the last 5 seasons. Going to 5 straight AFC Championship games, going to three Super Bowls, winning 2 of them. So that gives him credibility. Second bit is he played a lot like Jack did, like Coach Del Rio did. Being around championship teams, being on championship teams, that adds credibility. Doesn't mean he's better than anybody, but he has that credibility. He has that point of view, and players respect that as well. So I think that's going to be very helpful. The fact that my offensive, defensive coordinators are guys that have that kind of pedigree.
Ron, it seems like every training camp you have like a broad question mark with this football team. I believe last year was, is this football team mature enough to take that next step? What is kind of your broad question this year with this group?
Well, I think more so than anything else is it's going to obviously start with the quarterback position. I mean, that's about as big a question, broad a question as it gets. Has Sam grown and developed enough to help us take the next step? Is Jacoby ready to go and compete? And if he gets that chance, will he take us up to the next level? So, again, it is a big, broad question, but it does start with that position, and that really probably is the biggest thing.
Your new owner, Josh Harris, has always embraced analytics, whether it's with the Devils, the Philadelphia 76ers. How have you maybe had to change or embrace that analytic method of what he wants, and how are you guys changing maybe for this year with the analytics department?
Well, we've always used analytics. Since I got here, we've been using analytics. I used it when I was in Carolina. Obviously, it's grown even more in the last few years. When we signed Jonathan Allen to an extension, we used analytics. When we did Terry's, it was analytics. Deron Payne's was analytics. We used it when we drafted Emmanuel. And then we look at it and we use it when we game plan. I mean, analytics is nothing new. People have been using it for a long time. It's just really been pushed to the forefront because a lot more people talk about it. But we've done it. We've used it. My conversations with Mr. Harrison, knowing that they use it, they've used it with the Devils, as you mentioned, and the 76ers to help them in their decision-making process. It's one of the elements that you use. You have your scouting department, you got your coaching, and you got your analytics, and you take all three and you combine them, and that helps you come to what you believe are the best decisions. And so we do that. And in listening and talking with Mr. Harris, there's an opportunity for us to continue to grow that department and get those tools really even more so available for us going forward.
Just to follow up on having a lot to prove or feeling like you have a lot to prove, how much of that is just Harris related and also kind of the circumstances where you guys find yourselves as a team not having made the playoffs the last 2 years?
I think the circumstances. We've been too close. For everything that we've done and and for what we've had and how we've competed, we've been too close the last couple of years. We get into a really good run. It's time now to sustain it and just proving that these are the guys, these are the coaches, that I'm the right guy to help this organization continue to go forward.
And Josh Harris at his introductory presser mentioned a lot about culture. I know that's a big theme of yours, but is is the general idea of culture the same from person to person, or do you guys have to kind of mesh what your idea of culture is?
I think there is a mesh to it. I mean, it's very similar in terms of what people think about culture. I mean, when I'm going to ask you, well, what do you think about culture? And you're going to tell me, well, it's doing the right thing. Well, obviously, it's true. I mean, it is about doing the right thing. But what is your base fundamental? What do you fall back on? What is that mantra that you use? Is it about hard work? Is it about working together, teamwork? What is it? What are your base fundamentals in life? And that's what it's about. And I think in listening to what Mr. Harris had to say, listening to Mr. Rails and Magic Johnson and Mr. Ein, Mr. Blitzer talk and what their ideas and thoughts are, I think everybody's on the same on the same page, and that is, it takes a tremendous culture with good people to be successful, and that's what we want to continue to work on, continue to develop, and continue to grow.
Ron, you mentioned obviously winning football being kind of the priority. Do you have a sense from talking to Josh Harris about what his expectations for you as a coach are this season?
I did, and what I'm real appreciative is really how forward he was about it, about winning, about developing, about growing, about culture. I get that. I've been around this game, I like to believe, long enough to know that I understand what he's saying, and it's been a real good conversation he and I have had about that. So, I'm looking forward to more conversations with him. He'll be here tomorrow. It'll be a great opportunity for us. He'll be at practice. After practice, we'll spend some time together. He and I talking and just continuing to work on things.
You're listening to Ron Rivera's season opening press conference. Let's pause 10 seconds for legal ID, then right back to Ashburn here on the Team 980.
WTEM Washington and WJFK HD2 Manassas. The Team 980, an Odyssey station.
Here. Well, the truth of the matter is, guys, is whenever there was an issue or something, we always talked about it briefly, quickly. And then it was always, guys, again, if something comes out, let me handle it. Let me deal with it. You guys focus in on what's important. And obviously a lot of it had to do with what questions you guys asked them. And, that would always bring them back to it. But hopefully they could get on to the next thing. So one of the things I talked about today was obviously the ownership change and how that affects us. And now going forward, guys, it's about what we do on the football field. So, yeah, we did address it. We did talk about it. And for the most part, now it's about focusing on the field.
When you mentioned wanting to prove some stuff, is that just winning, or are there more components to it than that?
There's more components to it. There really is. And for me, it's about what we do and how we do it as football coaches, more so than anything else. So that's what I'm really interested in, is just showing what we are capable of as an organization, as a football team, and that's kind of where my focus will be, is trying to put the best product, the best team out on the football field.
Going back to Ben's question about some of the things that were on hold during the transition, are you able to finalize the offensive staff changes that you wanted to make?
Those are all things that we really have not had a chance to sit down and talk about. Our time has been limited. It's been very quick. I was given one opportunity to discuss things prior to the completion of the sale, which we did have a great conversation, and a lot of topics were broached, but we weren't able to make any decisions on, because the sale hadn't been completed. Mm-hmm. Then once the sale is completed, we've had a couple of conversations, mostly about philosophy, his philosophy in terms of what he's going to be here for in terms of support and helping us with decision making, stuff like that. But we really haven't had the chance to get into the nuts and bolts. There's plenty of time for us to do that. We just started training camp. We're still in July. A lot of those things, we do expect at some point to be able to address and deal with.
What specifically do you need to see from Sam Howell during training camp to really feel comfortable with him going forward?
I think more than anything else is consistent play and growth. One of the things that I really appreciated, and I go back to the Dallas game, was how he played, how he self-corrected, how he handled things, how he changed things on his own, some of his own decision-making. Those are things you want to see that tells you he's growing, he's getting it. And so when you watch him in practice, you watch him closely, how is he handling those types of deals? There's a lot of things that we will focus on, we will pay attention to, in working with Eric and Tavita, and I think that, and Kenny Zampese, we've got guys, we've got eyes on him, and we're really going through and kind of nitpicking almost, just making sure he's doing those things.
If you do get the green light to do some extensions, I guess, down the road, would you feel urgency to get anything done before the season, or would you want the season to play out before you say, hey, let's commit to this guy or that guy?
Well, I think the biggest thing is we'll see how things are unfolding with the players first and foremost once we get out on the field. Until, that gives us the opportunity to see our guys, but also, when we do have an opportunity to sit down and talk with the ownership, it will all be about the planning. And that's one thing we haven't had the chance to talk about. There will be a time when we will sit down, we will talk about the roster build and then roster planning in terms of the future with him. And until then, everything is still on hold. But, we do have an opportunity coming up.
All right. Thanks, Coach.
Cool. Thank you.
All right, that is Ron Rivera live from Ashburn here on the Hoffman Show. The season opening press conference talked about a lot. We'll talk about what the head coach said next here on the Team 980.
Hey, I'm Craig Hoffman.
And I'm Logan Paulson.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Ron Rivera just spoke at in Ashburn, where obviously they are getting ready for practice tomorrow. So that is exciting because that means training camp is here. They went through the conditioning test. Everybody passed. We are very excited about this. Anthony and I will both be out there at practice tomorrow. Open to the public on Thursday. There's big giant bleachers. Everyone come and watch. Pro move, by the way, Anthony. I will say this before we get back into what Rivera just said. Pro move. They sell them on Amazon and other places. UV shirts. Long sleeve. Prevents sunburn. They're super light. There's a reason every coach that's been coaching for 30 years has them. That's all I'm going to say. So, yes, if you see me at training camp, I'll be the smart guy in the UV hoodie. Probably with my hood up to protect my neck.
Are you also going to have on leggings and shorts?
No, I don't think I will go leggings or long pants. Like, my legs have been exposed to the sun quite a bit. Like, that is what it is. I'll just wear sunscreen for that. But the arms, for whatever reason, the arms tend to get a lot more leathery. So, I'm just saying, pro move, I'll be the one in the hoodie, not sunburn. That's all I'm going to say about that. Just a reminder for all the fans that are coming out there. You can also be smart like me. This has been a public service announcement brought to you by the good folks at who don't want you to get, skin cancer. Or just feel bad because your skin feels like leather. That's me. I'm the good folk. All right. Rivera, speaking in Ashburn, asked about all kinds of different things. Started off with a question from our good friend Ben Standing about how hard it was handling business without knowing the future of said business over the last 8-9 months since the Snyders announced the sale.
Well, I think the biggest thing for us was business as usual. We stayed focused on trying to put together the best team we could. We tried to, take care of getting guys signed to the best of our ability, and we focused in on that. We knew it would be a matter of time, and when that time came, we just wanted to be ready and have everything in place. And we feel like we had a good spring, good OTAs and minicamp, and we had a good 3 day of rookie camp the last few days. So we're excited about where we are.
Then the question becomes, okay, that's cool.
Awesome.
You did business as usual. What was that, Ant? What happened?
Are you trying to find me?
I'm not trying to. We both officiate this game. There's a clear flag on the play. We're coming together to decide exactly what penalty we're about to announce to the crowd. Is that a 5 or a 10?
So, I would think it's a 5.
Just a little false start?
To be honest, I don't think it's a fine.
That was definitely a fine. That was a false start. That's a 5-yard. Repeat the down. We don't need to harp on it. That was not. That's a 5. All right. That'll go on the board in the break. Just don't let me forget. That'll put Anthony. I'm at 20. Anthony's now at 10 fine points. So now I've lost my complete train of thought because that's what happens. Standing asked the question about handling business as usual, or Ron said it was business as usual, but there was business that was tied up. So what can they do now, contract extensions, et cetera, that they could not do before? Here's Rivera.
The biggest thing is, we've had an opportunity to meet, myself with Mr. Harrison. More so than anything else, we really discussed philosophy, mine and what his and the ownership group was going to be about supporting us and being there for us, trying to give us the tools that we need to go out and play good football and winning football. That was probably the thing that I really appreciated was having that conversation and just hearing their commitment to trying to do the best they can to bring back to this area, a sense of pride in this organization. And that was probably one of the really good things that I really appreciated in our first conversation. And then, we plan to have more conversations as we talk about the more intricate things of of our job, and that would be, as you mentioned, some of the extensions, some of the titles, about players, the future, all that kind of stuff is still conversations that we still need to have. I mean, there's still a lot of work to do, but obviously the thing that was stressed to me from Mr. Harris and some of his other partners was this is about, job one, and that's putting together a winning football team.
That's great. You know how you put together a winning football team? You sign the right guys to extensions so that they're here for a long time. So these things are not separate, but I understand that Harris has been here for about 4 days, and getting to, hey, our starting safety needs an extension isn't exactly the top of his to-do list, even if it might not be that far down, because it is something that if they're going to do it, you want to get done as quickly as possible. So Cam Curl, for instance, who I'm talking about here, of course, can have a clear head going through training camp. Rivera was followed up on that later, or there's a follow-up question from Nikki Javala later to Rivera about that, and he said that Harris is going to meet with him tomorrow more extensively after practice. So I do get the sense, like reading between the lines there, that they'll get to that stuff quickly, right? At first you have discussions about philosophy, these big flowery ideas type of things, and then you very quickly move on to details, because eventually it's like, okay, that's what we want to do. Give me that's the principles. Now let's get to the method. How do we achieve the things that you're talking about? Where are we at on contract extensions? Well, a lot of times contract extensions get done during camp. We've got a couple of guys we've been waiting on. We'd really like to extend Cam Curl. This is what we think he's worth. This is the conversations we've had with his agents, blah, 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 blah. Over in this pile, we have Montez Sweat, who we kind of got a major decision on because his contract more heavily impacts what happens with Chase Young. And if you sign Sweat now, that basically means Young's not getting signed, at least to a long-term deal, you'd think, after the season. So there's a lot to parse through there, and Harris does get a say in that stuff. But one thing that Harris said to Adam Schefter in his interview on Schefter's podcast is that he likes to hire sporting folks, so in this case, football people, and let them make football things. Of course, he wants updates, and he wants to have input, and he wants to be informed. But ultimately, his idea, or his ideal even, beyond idea, his ideal is to hire the best people possible and let them make those types of calls. And so when it comes to a Montez Sweat versus Chase Young and how to handle it, he's going to look at Martin Mayhew and Marty Herney and Eric Stokes and say, three guys, by the way, he mentioned by name in that interview, and say, like, what is it? What are we doing here? Like, this is your job. It's not my job to make these calls. It's my job to sign the check. My job to help ask questions that help us get to the best position. But ultimately the question is, what's our best plan here? What's the best possible outcome? And it doesn't sound like those conversations have happened yet. My guess, based off of nothing but logic, is Curl gets done, nobody else does. That's at least, and maybe that's not even a guess on logic. That's what I would do. I would re-sign Cam Curl to an extension, presuming that he doesn't want some kind of outrageous money. And then I would proceed forward with the regular season, knowing that I can only choose between Sweat and Young. And I might mid-season make that decision and sign one or the other. That way I can franchise tag and ultimately trade the other. But I think at this point, I don't know that I would sign Montez right now, because if all of a sudden Chase looks like a world beater and is healthy all year and the whole deal, I don't want to have locked myself into not feeling like it's responsible to sign Chase Young to a long-term deal. Although I guess you could franchise tag them and they can all just be super expensive for 1 year next year. Then you restructure guys or whatever. But that's where I'm at. Something that I talked to Rivera about in the spring, I asked him the question at the press conference. We all talked about it, was how he spends his time. He's been here. He's been able to put a lot of things in place. He's been doing more supervising. And he was asked about specifically how he's going to use his time now that he's got even more of it. Not just because he's a senior coach who's got all these things in place, and Bieniemy in place to run the offense, Del Rio in place to run the defense, but he doesn't have to deal with ownership stuff anymore. So how is he going to use his time now?
I think involvement, obviously, primarily on the defensive side, will increase. I mean, obviously, Jack is still the coordinator, still call all the plays and putting plans together. But I'll be around a little bit more, and I will pop in on Eric and his guys a little bit more, and again work with Eric, continue to mentor Eric and help him in his quest. But those are the types of things that will I'll be able to focus a little bit more on.
I think that's interesting because when I asked him that question in the spring, he didn't mention that at all. I just think it's interesting. I don't think it's like all of a sudden he doesn't trust Jack Del Rio. I'm not trying to start anything. I'm not trying to insinuate anything negative. I genuinely find it interesting. I wonder if it's part of the thing he did over the summer was review like, okay, this is now going to be off my plate. What really do I want to do? And I think that him spending more time on the defensive side of the ball is good. I think Jack's done a fantastic job, specifically last year. I think, schematically, they've been pretty solid for a couple of years now. They've certainly had their moments. But Ron did make his bones in this league by being a defensive coordinator, and a very good one. That is the side of the ball he knows. And I look at it as quality control. It's a chance to have another voice in the room who's highly capable, highly qualified, highly experienced, to have a different way to teach something. Hey, we're not getting through to this player. Maybe the way Ron says it resonates better than the way Jack says it. That can go the other way too. Ron might say something, everyone's kind of look at him sideways, and Jack goes, hey, actually it's this. And, the idea gets through thanks to Del Rio, but it's good that Rivera was in the room to present it in the first place. Like, there's a lot of potential upside. I would say there's very little potential downside. These guys have been working together. There's a lot of healthy respect there between the two. It's not like Ron's looking to all of a sudden take over as a defensive coordinator. It can just help plug some of the holes that they've had when things haven't been well communicated or haven't gotten through to players, or maybe a detail did slip between the cracks over the last couple of years. And then obviously he'll got a quality control check the other side of the ball as well, because he's the head coach, and that's what he should be doing, because that's how head coaches work. Last but not least, as we run back some of what Ron Rivera just said, again, if you want the full press conference, we aired the entirety of it live here on the Team 980, meaning you can rewind on the stream at YouTube, or on YouTube at the Team 980, or you can rewind in the Odyssey app and listen to any of Rivera's press conference. But the last cut that I wanted to play for you is a good question from JP Finley, because right now the energy in the city is palpable. There is an excitement level that has been unmatched in basically a quarter century. I guess maybe Robert 2012 would be the one exception to that. I've certainly heard the stories of what training camp was like that year down in Richmond, and it was the first year of Richmond as well, so there's some parallels there, like the first year of a new era, exciting players, all these kinds of things. This year, it's just, the owner is the biggest thing, and, obviously the setup's a little different in Ashburn with the bleachers, and it feels different. It feels more professional in that way. But then the whistle blows, and you're hitting your teammates, and you're running through the same plays, and it's training camp. It's monotonous. It's important, but it's boring. It's hot as hell, and it tends to get pretty frustrating pretty quickly, and it's not everyone's favorite time of year after about the first day of being out there when the excitement wears off. So how do you try to capture that excitement that is palpable around the city and around the fan base and hold it through camp and into the regular season? That was the question from JP. Here's the answer from Rivera.
I think every day is going to be a different kind of day, a different kind of challenge for our guys. And a thing that I'm hoping and counting on, too, is that, having the fan base around, hopefully in mass, out here brings a little bit of energy. It does bring a little bit of a spark. I think that'll be something that'll help us. And then next thing you know, we'll be playing preseason games. And then after the first preseason game, we're going to go down to Baltimore. And that's going to change for a little bit, obviously, because different scenery, different opponent. We'll practice against them for a couple of days. That'll be some energy. And then after that, we'll come back. We'll play them at home. And then we'll finish up with our last preseason game. So I kind of hope that the way things are spaced, we'll continue to bring that energy, continue to have that positive flow, and we'll continue to see growth.
Joint practices are the best for giving you something to look forward to. I am pumped for that. Those are in Baltimore, right, Ant? I'm not making that up.
Yep.
Those are in Owings Mills.
Yep.
Are you planning on going up there for one or two of those?
You better doubt. You better guarantee it. Sorry.
I better not doubt it.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a good play. I mean, you got a little bit of a head start being already up in up in Maryland, but
just a tad bit.
I hope that they're early because that means we can beat Beltway traffic.
Yeah, it is brutal coming back down 295.
Like, who do I know in Baltimore? Or I just get a hotel in Baltimore. We got a radio station up there, so like we could do the show from up there if we wanted to. I'm just saying. Just saying. I think we got time to get home. Sleeping in my own bed sounds good. It ain't that far.
Nope.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go to at least one of those. Also, because I want to see the facility. I want to see how they do things up there. They're always the gold standard. I've never been to camp up there, so that should be pretty fun to head up there later on this month. All right, when we get back here on the Hoffman Show, we got 2 interviews, very, very different subject matters. Don't even think I've teased this on the show today. So coming up next, our guy Peter Rosenberg is going to join. Huge fan of the team, obviously. Now makes his living doing radio up in New York, but he's loved this team as much as he loves any team for so long. Has so many interesting thoughts. He himself is also in the sports radio world, obviously. So we'll talk to Rosenberg about all of the things, the end of Snyder, the start of Harris, and his excitement for this football season. Plus, coming up at 6 o'clock, I was able to catch up earlier today with a name that you might not have heard in a long, long time. Former Washington safety Deshazor Everett. Of course, Deshazor's career came to a crashing pause, possibly end, when he was involved in a tragic car accident that ultimately killed his longtime girlfriend. Now, what you might have heard at the time was not actually the true story of what happened. But Deshazor is sharing that true story now in the hopes that what happened to him doesn't happen to anyone else. It's a kind of an intense conversation, but it is also inspiring, and I think it is more than worth our time. So we'll share that for you coming up at 6 o'clock. Rosenberg next, Deshazor Everett at 6. Then more from Rivera coming up at 6:30. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app.
You can listen to the
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/@theteam980. And joining us now, a man who's having the month of his life. He just got married, had a phenomenal-looking honeymoon, at least based off Instagram. Then he came back, had a birthday, and his favorite team was sold away from a terrible person to someone who seems to know what they're doing. Ladies and gentlemen, from ESPN New York and Hot 97, DC's own Peter Rosenberg. Rosenberg, what's up, man?
Craig, how are you? This is, you know what? When you frame it that way, this has been a hell of a month. You're right. This has been pretty damn good.
I shouldn't speak out of turn. I shouldn't put on you that this is the month of your life, but it's definitely a good month.
It's up there. It's up there. The wedding alone that day was so awesome that probably would have clinched the month. But then, yeah, getting this news also finally, sort of after drips and drabs over the last few months, we finally got the news. It's pretty fantastic.
For sure. And you joined us the day, I don't know, it's like one of the days that it became kind of more official. On one of those days, you joined us at a commercial break from the Michael Kay show.
Yes.
But now, when the news finally hits, and it's like, okay, the ink's dry, like the agreement's done, the vote has happened. How did that particular moment hit you?
I mean, at that point, I'd gotten to really confident it was going to get done, even after the week before when there was like that slight hiccup and a little bit of concern there could be something or other. I still was I've been confident for a while it was going to happen. It's hard to pinpoint, like now looking back over all the stories over the last 3 years of like when it was getting more real. But I do remember at several points starting to say like, I think this is trending the right way. And I remember saying at one point, to either to JP Finley or on the K show or both, the Washington Post isn't stopping. Like I am a big believer in the power of good media, and when journalists want to do something for the people, doing the right thing. And I really feel that the Washington Post for a long time, it sounds negative if you use the terminology, had an axe to grind. They did, though. They had an axe to grind on behalf of the public of the Washington, D.C. area that really wanted the truth to come out about this team. And the one thing I noticed was no matter what happened, like a month or two would pass, and then like you'd see another story pop up. And I'm like, oh, people are just... And by the way, the Post may just be the outlet for whoever really did have the axe to grind. But someone out there with more power than you or me was not going to stop until everything got out there. And I'm sure there was still more in the chamber that didn't get out. But this
definitely is.
This was enough, though. And so I started to believe in the last like year and a half, 2 years, just doesn't seem like they're going to stop till it happens. So I'm thrilled. When I think about the season, I get really excited. It's kind of like, it's a little bit hard to even picture. I mean, this has been my entire adult life, dude. Like I just turned 44 a couple days ago. And so this takes me back to literally I was in college, like at Maryland when this team got sold. And really the glory sort of ended when I got out of high school and heading into college. So my entire adult life, when I've been like, I'm as passionate about them now as I've ever been. I really think it's like grown for me as I got further and further away from the glory years. And yet it always had this asterisk of, I love this team more than any other team. But when I meet someone and they go, oh, who's your team? I always had to sort of like bite my mouth down a little bit and say like, Washington. And whether it was the name for a while when that became a huge thing, but really all of it, including the name, in my opinion, all had to do with Snyder. I know this is potentially controversial to say, even with everything that's happened in the world, I don't know that the name thing even happens the way it does, if not for the vitriol against Dan Snyder. So it really, to me, all comes back to Dan Snyder. I'll never forget the day. And by the way, I was in favor of them changing the name for a long time prior to it becoming a big story. But that being said, it was that moment when he said, you can put it in all caps, we will never change the name. Again, he he would alienate people in such a horrible way that it's hard to even measure the level of impact that his negativity had on this franchise, fan base, etc.
No doubt. And I think that's an interesting point. Like I think both things can be true. I think it ultimately would have changed because of all of the things, the society that we live in, but also the way it all goes down is unique to him. Which then brings us to the new guy, your Chevy Chase brethren, in Josh Harris. What are your early impressions of him from the event on Friday and his early comments? Both he, Magic, Mitchell Rales, everybody that spoke on Friday.
I mean, listen, everyone's saying the right things and looks to be the right people. I know very little about them, except kind of the basic bio stuff everybody knows. I've asked around here to, Sixer fans and Devil fans their feelings, and generally people feel pretty good about where their teams have gone under his ownership. So, yeah, man, I mean, this was more an example of, like, just don't give us someone with a glaring baggage. You know what I mean? Like, just don't give me Elon Musk. Like, don't give me someone who comes with a whole lot of other outside the business stuff. Because, I mean, let's be honest, bro. What can I possibly understand about a person this rich? We don't operate or understand people like that. I'm not in rooms like that. I couldn't even purport to understand what these people are like. But I do know that he's from Chevy Chase. I do know that he's a lifelong fan. I do know that he's a part of other organizations that he has not run into the ground. And to me, those are all things that I'm willing to say, let's give it a shot.
Yeah, that's the thing that I think struck me is, like, I don't pretend that Josh Harris is completely in touch with, like, people who operate at you and I's level in terms of the way we roll through the world as human beings who can't buy our way through whatever doors we want to open. But he did seem very actually human. And after 25 years or 24 years of Snyder being as disconnected as any human I can possibly remember in terms of the sports world, that to me was extremely refreshing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've been in New York now. I've been, most importantly, doing ESPN New York now for like 7 years. And I've had, in those 7 years, personally, multiple interactions with John Mara, right? I wonder if people in my shoes in D.C. over 25 years had multiple interactions with Dan Snyder. They just don't. Like, John Mara will come out when we're at camp and say hello to us, do interviews with us in person, and then also just be a friendly, or if there's a really, I remember a few years ago when there was a big will Eli go, what happened, blah, blah, blah. Mara called the show and, like, talks like a human being. Like, he it's not every day, but it's not like he's some crazed wizard hiding in a tower, And
no, you have James Dolan for that there.
Exactly. Dolan would be our closest that you get, and even Dolan, who's the worst.
Terrible.
To me, he still pales to Snyder. Like, he will again at least show up and talk. Not often, and he does a horrifying job. But there's two things that I'd give Dolan over Snyder. They're both petty, petulant, insecure, make the wrong decisions, alienate people because of their pettiness. Like, they have a lot in common. But one, Dolan owns two franchises, and one of them is at least a pretty competent franchise in the Rangers. Like, they're not an embarrassment. They haven't won in 25 years a Stanley Cup, but they've been there, and they're relevant, and the building's full. Neither team did he completely erode the fan base. Now, granted, MSG is a bit different than FedEx Field, but regardless, I mean, one of the crazy things that we almost like took for granted about the Snyder tenure and how awful it's been is that the building's empty. Like, I almost like watch the games and it never stops blowing my mind. You might only see it once or twice. You'll see it at the top of the game because you're at games more in person, obviously, than I am. Most of mine are just watching the national broadcast at home. So you'll see the game, you'll see the stadium at the beginning, and then maybe coming out of the half. And if I'm ever with anyone else, I always like tap them and I go, do you see this? NFL buildings don't look like this. You could be the worst team in the world, let alone a team that when I was a kid, getting tickets to a Redskin game as a child was it wasn't a thing. And if it happened, it was like, oh my God, I got tickets. I'm canceling everything I could possibly have on my calendar to go to this game. Where are the seats? I don't know. I'm just going to be there. And to now look up and you're like, man, it's literally, and remembering, of course, that they added the stupid FedEx colored plastic to block out 10,000 seats.
Oh, it's more than that. It's like 30,000.
Yeah, it's still empty. I just, to me, that was always like almost overlooked. And I'm like, how is the NFL, a place that is as greedy and money hungry as anywhere on earth, how are they good with this? With this really a historic franchise with multiple championships. It's wild.
Yeah, and it's a question that I've asked a lot. Don Van Natta and I talked about that quite a bit. There's no good answer. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Peter Rosenberg is with us. All right, let's play like a little bit of Commanders or Washington franchise bingo here. Hit all the spots. One, name change. We talked about the old name. I think we agree that's not on the table. But do you? Yeah. There are. Look. You'd be surprised in people who think it is.
And I'd like to say one thing, just to clarify what I said earlier. I do believe it likely would have changed. However, if you were dealing with someone who wasn't a maniacal jerk and someone who was thoughtful and understood the negative attachment people would have to that word and was remotely capable of being any sort of politician, I believe there probably could have been political gamesmanship and relationships formed that could have at least staved that conversation off for a long time. The right donations, the right community support, the right alliances, not being a complete jerk. I think you could have probably seen all of a sudden people coming out for defense of that name that you'd be like, wow, I'm surprised to hear someone say that. But he's not savvy or capable or has any way to do anything except beating it with a hammer over and over again. So, but no, to answer we are not going back there. So the question is, where do we go from here?
Right. Is there any particular name that, one, do you think that they, I don't know, need's a strong word, but like level of need, percent 0 to 100, 0, they don't need to change it, just everyone needs to get over it, move on. 100%, they have to do it. Where is the level of need to change the name, and is there any name in particular that you think is actually good?
Okay, I put the need at very low. Like in terms of like need, like it's something I actually think about. Very low. I mean, and by the way, I was not a huge Commanders fan by name. You know, when it happened, I certainly wasn't like, oh my God, yes. I thought, I did not think that, but I just thought, oh yeah, it's obligatorily sort of has a military connection. It's hitting the touch points for the kind of things that they do. Doesn't surprise me. A year into it, I find it to be very non-offensive. Like, it's fine. It's fine. I'm not someone who sits there miserable over it at all. I frankly think like they could have been more clever with the designs, and I think that would have probably gone a long way to people not hating it so much. Because I guess I'm just confused about what people think. Let me say this. So the need, I'll answer, is low. I don't think it's a high priority for me at all.
Yeah.
I think, though, if you're going to do it, obviously it has to happen right this second and never change again. Okay, because you're one notch from full-on laughingstock even after all these changes if you continue to change your name. Like, that's just from a branding standpoint, that's just suicide. To me, though, if you are going to change it at this point, I think you're almost backed into a corner where the only way you can go is back to football team. Like, I think the idea of now coming up with yet another name where, like, you look in the history books and it went from Redskin, football team, Commander, fourth name in like 6 years, that to me looks like a little sad and pathetic. And real quick, is the name you're going to come up with so good and so unanimously loved that it's worth sort of the silliness of changing again? Throw one at me. I'll tell you if one I think is good. Like, but so far the ones I like, I liked Red Tails. I always liked Warriors quite a bit. I thought that would really work for multiple reasons. Are any of them going to be, though, like a unanimous slam dunk? I don't think so.
No, they're 100% not. I've seen enough polling, the answer, and dealt with enough fans on a daily basis.
Does anyone agree, though, with the idea of football team, or is that like completely
a dead idea?
idea?
I think that probably is the most common one. It's like, you know what? Like, whether that or like you make it football club and it becomes DCFC kind of thing,
right?
Which has a very soccer European, feel to it, but some people really like it. All right, real quick on the way out, actual football. What's the thing you're most excited for this season? Because you are as jazzed up for this season as you have been in a long time. What is the thing that has you jazzed?
Well, I mean, besides the obvious, the number one thing is just not going in with the guilt of knowing that my team is owned by Dan Snyder.
Right.
Losing that sort of cloak of evil is really what I'm most excited about.
Yes, emotional freedom.
But really, I mean, I think the only answer is seeing Sam Howell. Like I because everything else, really up and down, we know this team pretty well, and we sort of know what we have, which is a really strong team. Like, it's very interesting to hear the excitement here in New York around the Jets and sort of the lack of excitement nationally around the Commanders. And to me, the only difference is Aaron Rodgers, obviously, versus Sam Howell. Now, that is a huge difference. That is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time against an unknown entity completely. But I would submit that Aaron Rodgers on a new team at this age and this stage is a little bit more of an unknown entity than people are giving it credit for. Like, I don't expect this to look the same as it looked 5 years ago. I say all of that to say, wow, that is a lot when you think about the fact that this team, if the Commanders had made a play for Aaron Rodgers, where would we be getting talked about? I think people would be talking about NFC Championship conversation. They'd think this is a team that could really do something. Instead, we're basically not talked about nationally at all. Like, we're not really in the conversation in a real way. And I always am like a little annoyed by that because I find this team over the last couple of years to be really strong in multiple units. So to me, everything's about Sam Howell. I mean, do we have a quarter? Do we somehow stumble into a guy? Like, that would be amazing. In all likelihood, probably not. And we're going to end up starting over one more time. And the real test will then come for Josh Harris. What do you do with Ron Rivera? What do you do up and down with this team? And where do you go? But to me, the most exciting thing is week one. What does Sam Howell look like? Because frankly, you know, he looked nice in that game against Dallas, but how much can we really judge in one final game of the season? Like, we know nothing.
We do, which is what makes this time of year so fun. Everybody knows nothing. We all pretend like we know a lot, say a bunch of stuff, and then September rolls around and we find out who's right and wrong.
And it's all that, and it's really just because I think you would agree. We basically know what this team is outside of Howell. They're going to be a pretty solid team. They're not going to be the best in the league, but they will be good enough that if you had good quarterback play, you could be talking playoffs and doing something.
No question.
So let's see if we got a guy. Maybe we do.
Maybe. That'd be pretty funny. They stumble into a guy in year one of the Josh Harris
Wouldn't
era
that be crazy?
after 24 years.
Can you
in
imagine
the
the hysteria of like, we found a guy and Snyder is gone? Can you imagine? Oh, my God. I know.
I have ratings bonuses that would appreciate that. Peter Rosenberg, everybody. ESPN New York, the Michael K. Show, Ebro in the morning, as well as Hot 97. Always good to chat, my friend. Appreciate you.
Thanks, dude. We'll talk down the line. Appreciate it, Craig.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980.
All right, that is Peter Rosenberg with us here on the Hoffman Show. Happy to catch him on a day where he is still not back to work doing his sports radio show, so nice enough for Peter to join ours. I thought the point that he brings up at the end there is pretty interesting because for all of the excitement of the past couple of days, the Commanders do not get any love nationally. It's something that we've talked about on this show a lot from the football side of things. It's just, to me, unbelievable, and I'm glad Peter, someone who cares about the team, obviously, a lot as a fan, but is not in the market every day, also agrees with. This is not some local fantasy that we're telling ourselves that we're just ignored and that everyone ignores us and everyone thinks we stink and the whole deal, to the point that now me, an apparently objective radio host, is using the term we. But the Commanders, from the football public, get zero love. And if you compare them to a team like the Jets, the biggest differences are they've got, obviously, a Hall of Fame level quarterback. The Commanders have Sam Howell. And other than that, the second biggest difference is they're in New York and they're the Jets, and the most popular shows in the country have hosts that, like national TV shows, have hosts that care about New York sports teams at an outsized level because those are their teams, and the Washington Commanders do not. Like, defensively, they're not that different. They've got, obviously, some questions all over the place, but they've got super skill position guys. Their offensive lines have some question marks. They've got new coordinators to go with their new quarterback. Again, yeah, I'm not trying to downplay the difference between Aaron Rodgers and Sam Howell, but is that enough considering the circumstances, what Rodgers has been recently, where he is age-wise, all these kinds of things to justify the gap in not only coverage but in expectations, where you got, I'll just go by name, like Get Up, which of course is hosted by Mike Greenberg, who's a super Jets fan, and they thus gets outsized attention on that show. It's human nature. It's not even a criticism. But they literally have their analysts come on saying, like, if they don't make the Super Bowl, it's a failed season. And you're like, what? The Jets? Are we watching the same Jets? I know it's not same old Jets, but it might be. And for the Commanders, people just assume that it's going to go the other way, that they're the 27th best team, and you got people that are so far ahead or have the Packers, for instance, so far ahead. And like Jordan Love's barely played. And whose receiving core do you like better? Theirs or the one here? Whose defense do you like better? Theirs or the one here? So it just doesn't make sense to me, the lack of, and I hesitate to call it respect, but the lack of expectations nationally for the Commanders on a football front. And I'm glad for a team that I think legitimately could be messing around towards a playoff spot towards the end of the year, and should be based off their talent, in my opinion. At least has the energy and positive momentum, let's call it, locally, that people are excited, even if it's about something else, because I do think they've got a chance to start, obviously, with the Cardinals, with a statement victory. And once you go 1-0, like, you're going to be, there's only so bad you can be after 3 weeks if you start 1-0. And that just being around 500, being in the mix, seeing how the season plays out, letting your young players get better, hopefully is a formula that they can ride out, even though they got a tough week 2 in Buffalo and obviously a tough schedule. But you just never know. And the discrepancy between what I think a lot of us feel they can be and certainly what they feel internally and what the national expectations are compared to other teams who have very similar talent and are being told that they're Super Bowl or bust is some dots that don't connect for me. But about to put all the talking behind us. Well, we'll still talk because that's our jobs. But about to put the talking behind us. The football starts for the Commanders tomorrow with the first training camp practice. When we get back here on the Hoffman Show, hard left turn. The Deshazor Everett story is tragic, but it might not be the exact story that you think when I say that name. Of course, the former Washington safety was in a fatal car accident a couple of years ago where he was the driver and his longtime girlfriend passed away. Initial news reports about that crash were not correct, and it's something that, frankly, even as someone who covered the team, I wasn't fully aware of the full story until I was researching to talk to Deshazor today. But he's ready to share his story, so he will next here on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And joining us now is a guy whose name you might not have heard in a while, but whose story you're at least vaguely familiar with. It's Deshazor Everett, former Washington safety. And Shays, you and I used to talk all the time in the locker room. I don't think either of us ever imagined a discussion like we're about to have. So I appreciate your time, man.
Oh, yeah, Craig, and I appreciate you taking the time out, giving me a chance to talk about everything.
Absolutely. And I'll just start very broad. And actually, let me give a little bit more background to the audience first before I ask my first question. You obviously, people know, had a terrible, terrible accident a couple years ago. And in that accident, your longtime girlfriend passed away. You ultimately, after the investigation and everything, pled guilty to a reckless driving charge. And you have now worked with some folks on a PSA so that no one ever has to go through what you've gone through. So with that background and for the refresher with the audience, I'd simply like to start by asking, how are you doing? Because I know there's a mental health component to all of this that you want to talk about, but how are you, man?
I mean, every day is a challenge. I mean, every day is a new day. So whatever it brings, I just try to face it head on. I can't say it's gotten any easier. I've just gotten better at dealing with it and, just trying to find ways to find peace and, just continue motivating myself and more than anything, helping others. So.
Yeah. Talking about these things is tough, yet you reached out because you wanted to talk about it. Why do you want to talk about it?
I feel like the biggest thing in me talking about it is, giving someone, because I never had the perspective of like maybe, dealing with something like this, knowing someone close to me that has dealt with something like this. And it was like, I got an opportunity to tell my story. And the biggest impact I could leave is the impact of, changing one person, or if it's a multiple group of people, just me telling my story is like, hey, this could happen to anyone, because that's literally what happened in my mindset. Like, just never expected it to happen, and then wake up one day and it's like, this is the story that's tied to me.
So for clarity here, I think it's important to let you tell your story, because people have read news reports, people have, maybe heard secondhand what happened, or they maybe heard original news reports that weren't necessarily correct in all the facts. What is your version of your story?
The version of my story is I lost someone near and dear to me due to a car accident. You had the press release of like me driving 90 miles per hour, and the first thing, I don't know if I didn't read much of the articles, but was alcohol involved or drugs involved, and it's like anyone that knows the type of person that I am, then you had your opinion about me, but none of that was the facts at hand. And after getting professional accident recreation done, and my lawyer working his ass off, and even the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office, once they got their people to investigate, and it's like, after witness coming out with their statements and the judge even reading all the facts at hand, it was an accident, and that's the biggest thing that, I feel like I need cleared about everything, is like that it was an accident. But even saying that, I still wake up every day and it's like, even though I know it's an accident, it's like it was my accident, and I lost someone near and dear to me. So, and as much as I struggled and deal with it and battle with it, I know there's a family that's impacted by it. There's friends that's impacted by it. So, as I said, like, I just try every day and impact someone else, and it really motivates me to be able to do that. But telling this story, maybe I'll impact more people. Once I get it out there, maybe I'll get another chance to play in the NFL. Like you said, like, I'm working my ass off still, like, to train and be ready if I do get a call. And it's like I could further along push this and push for what could happen when you're reckless driving. And as I said in the video, it could be 1 mile over, it could be texting, and anything, and just a freak accident. It could cost you everything.
I think as Deshazor Everett's with us here on the Team 980, Shays, I think that's the thing that really struck me as I kind of re-researched everything in preparation for this. Is it wasn't like you were drunk or anything like that. No substances, no altered mind state, no texting, and you weren't going 90 miles an hour. And to me, that makes the story actually more powerful, and the message that you have in the PSA more powerful is that, as you said, 1 mile per hour over, or, what it turned out to be, what was 10, 15 miles an hour over,
after accident recreation, and after it was a witness that we passed on the highway, in a single file line in the cars, and we were going maybe 10 miles over, and I can't give you an exact number at that time, but
right. But it wasn't like it was so out of bounds that you hear the story and you're like, oh, of course something bad happened, right? It's the kind of speeding that all of us have done, and probably many people, there are people in their cars listening to this right now, might look down at their speedometer and be like, I am going 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. As you started to learn about this and wanted to educate people, like, how jarring was that for you to realize, like, wow, that's all it takes. That's how dangerous this is.
Well, I mean, in dealing with it, I say it takes a while to, like, get back to you, and in saying that, like, it's not like I'm ever gonna be the man that I used to be, because obviously I've had some very life altering events happen, and before it happened, 10 miles over was nothing, but now it's like you look back and it's like, if 10 miles over and, like, this is what's come from it, like, it is too much, and it's like. And I look down sometimes, like, oh, I'm doing 3 miles over the speed limit. Like, if it says speed limit, and, more than anything, now, especially after going through it, it's like, that's what I try to obey. And, you know how the world is now. Like, everybody's fast paced, everyone moving, people in a hurry. You're trying to get through and do what you got to do. But you don't want a tragedy to come from it. And you would rather be late than not be able to get there at all.
No doubt. And I think most of us probably also think about that, like, oh, we just don't want to get a speeding ticket. And then you hear a story like yours, and you realize that the speeding ticket can actually be a good outcome compared to obviously more tragic things. Deshazor Everett's with us here on the Team 980. And Shays, one of the things I also found powerful in that PSA was you kind of attacked two different topics that are very important, very heavy. You talked about the reckless driving element, but you also talked about the mental health side of it and what you've gone through to try to just be able to kind of operate day to day. So how long did it take you to get help for yourself to make sure that you could keep going forward? And what have you found most helpful? As you said earlier, like, it's not easy, but you're getting better at dealing with it. What are the things that have worked for you?
As you touched on mental health, like, I can't say it was something that I wasn't aware of, but it was something that wasn't really a big worry of mine, or, like, I didn't have too many people that I felt I needed to worry about with mental health. And it's like, now after coming through on the other side of this, and trying to continue to push forward, it's like, there was months at a time where it was like, I still look back now and it's like, I see pictures and it's like, I don't even remember this. Like, it's just like all of it was like a mental fog to me. And it's not until really when, I guess, I found, like, more of a purpose for myself, and it wasn't just as far as doing it for me. And like I said, my purpose, well, not my purpose, but I get more motivation or, like, joy out of, getting a call from a guy from back home that's preparing to go to A&M. Well, he's there now, but, like, hey, bro, I wanted to just come work out with you, train with you. And it's like, on those training days where I know, regardless how much I love football, it was a dark day, I couldn't get out of bed. He's like, bro, come on. He's dependent on me. So, just being able to, like, give to someone else, or, like, give them my knowledge or my story, is like, that was my motivation. And, I had a camp not too long ago when it was a free camp, to give back just to the community and just give all of the kids just an opportunity, because I always hosted the camp, but I had stopped after the accident, everything. So I just wanted to bring it back because I know ultimately Olivia would have pushed me to, keep giving back, and doing as she was is helping the kids and helping others around her. She was so impactful and just a great spirit just to be around. So that's what I just try to keep her legacy going, and every day just motivate myself to live. And, I still have dark days. It's like I get up and it's like, man, like, I may never get a shot. I may get a shot to be able to tell the story, but it's like, I know I keep a picture of her in my Bible before I read every morning. And that's what kind of helps get me up, because just I see her face and I know she'll tell me keep going. So that's what I try to do.
Mental health in the NFL is something that I feel like from covering it, I'm not in the locker room in the way that you were, but like it's evolved over the years. And I think younger generations, people, millennials and younger, the way we look at mental health is very different, more holistic. It's more of a thing that we do talk about. Where older generations, it was shoved to the side and kind of this machismo, like I'm a tough guy, I don't need to talk about it. No one talks about feelings, whatever. When you're like thinking of yourself in an NFL locker room a couple of years ago, like how much did guys talk about mental health? How much did you ever think about it yourself? And how obviously has that changed as you've had conversations with former teammates that are still friends of yours and you guys are checking in on each other now?
Me checking on others now is like, I say that's the biggest part of my mental health struggles. It was because I know even when I'm going through what I'm going through, and as you said, growing up, my dad's very old school. It was like, oh, you all right, just suck it up. You ain't got to worry about that. You ain't got to talk about that if you don't want to. But it's like, so you keep so much bottled in, and it's like, sometimes you explode, or like sometimes one thing could just set everything off. And to me, that wasn't mental health. It was just, oh, you're keeping things bottled up. But now it's like, that affects you. It affects your mental, right? So that's a mental health issue. And so, like you said, like in a locker room, you probably never really talk about things that was going on at home. You talk about football, and then other people that you have, some people have a family at home, they're not going to come talk to a 23-year-old about, oh, yeah, the issues that's going on with my kids and my wife. But it's like now I just feel like so more open, because it's like I know if I keep it bottled up, and I'm in the middle of workouts, and it's like, I haven't talked to someone, or I'm thinking about something too much, and I just need a second. And so I had to navigate my way through that and find the ways to cope, where it's like mentally I could like focus and do the things that I need to do. And like I said, it's still a struggle at times, and I still have my days. It may be a week, and I need someone to talk to. I just need something to just, I'm not gonna say distract me, but push me in a positive direction. And it's just little nuances like that I guess I rely on others now, and because it's not a lot of things that you'll be able to get through yourself. And even as a man, as much as you believe that, like, you need others around you, you need more positive people around you. And luckily for me, I had a lot of friends that I've made and people along the way that I've showed a lot of love to, and like it was reciprocated right back. And I was constantly checked on. It was like I constantly had someone that I could rely on. Like they kind of knew the struggles and knew things that I may need some help and guidance with.
One of the most beautiful parts of your story to me is the grace that Olivia's family has shown, and you said they're still like family to you. How has that been helpful, and what has that relationship been like since the accident over these past couple of years?
I mean, the relationship is positive. I say the biggest thing is, we want to just continue living for Liv and, living like Liv. And the only, we can't have any negativity towards each other and plan to accomplish that. So, I know we all grieve in our own ways, and it hasn't been perfect along the way, but I know we took our time, and we're still healing as we go. But it's not a day that I feel like that I can't reach out and say anything to any of the family members and get something back. And because we all love Olivia, we're all hurt by it, but ultimately we all want to continue her legacy going.
Deshazor Everett with us here on the Team 980. You are at a point now. I know that you want to try to get back in the NFL. What's that look like for you? And have you, what kind of conversations have you had with folks around the league to try to make that a reality?
The biggest thing I want to do right now is I was focusing on getting this PSA, released out, because after an accident like that, not many people maybe want to deal with something in that manner, or people had their other thoughts about it. Most people haven't followed it and don't know what initially came out. So after this is released, and I'm just gonna keep working. Ultimately what happens is gonna happen, but hopefully I can get some positive traction. Someone wants to bring me in for a workout, give me an opportunity, because I'm still young in my mind. Not that I didn't have a great career because in my mind I have, but I feel like I still got more in the tank, and I want to go out there and, like I said, be able to promote my story more. Because granted, on the NFL stage, you're gonna get more attention, you're gonna get more traction about anything that you're doing, and I feel like that's the biggest way that I can impact more people. And aside with that, just being able to, impact more kids as far as being able to do my camp and, having more players come out to my camp and, maybe hosting more camps in other places. Because, Olivia worked very closely with kids and even kids with disabilities. That's the most touching part about it. So, maybe I could get into that more and, do things like that with it.
Are you at peace if this ultimately, you've played your last NFL game? Have you let yourself think about that? I know the athlete drive is still deep within you, and often it's like, I don't, that thought doesn't cross your mind. So if I just put it there, I'm sorry, but is that something that you're at peace with if you have played your last NFL game?
Definitely. Like I said, you got to be at peace. After I lost so much on that night, from Olivia to my career to a car that I really put all my time into and a lot of effort, just because that's something that I really had a lot of enjoyment behind. But it's like once all that left and it was just taken away, it was just your perspective changed and your view on life and what you really need and what you really need to focus on and what's really going to be there. Following it, say if I didn't survive the accident, what would I have left with my legacy? And so now it's just I want to be more impactful. So it's anybody that knows me I don't know, Deshazor, the story that came with it never even been a thought. But it's I just want to leave a better legacy, regardless if I play again or not. If I do play again, I won't be known for just playing. I want to be, he did a lot of events, and I remember this guy came out and spoke that he spent time with this child and things like that.
You're also allowed to have hobbies and joy and things that provide positivity in your life. And I was debating on asking this, but you just kind of referenced it. But for those that don't know, which I would say 99.5% of the audience is probably true. You loved cars. We had conversations in the locker room where you'd start get going on car stuff, and I'd be like, man, I have no idea what you were talking about right now. But that was a hobby for you. You were in the garage, you were underneath the hood, in a very literal sense. And then this thing happens with a vehicle that is as tragic as anything that will ever happen in your life. Is that a joy that you still have, that you're still able to have? And, if so, how? If not, have you been able to find other things that can, occupy your mind and bring you that joy?
No, I don't mess with cars anymore. I probably have one classic car that I just plan to hold on to just for the joy of having a classic car. Once I'm up in age, hopefully I make it that far. But I just been spending more time, let's say, with my children and just trying to find new hobbies. And I've really been taking more time of traveling back home and trying to train younger kids back at home and just give them something that I didn't really have, as far as being from a small town and having a guy that's ventured out and played in the NFL just come back, and I just give them some techniques or some little small training nuggets, just what to keep working on, what to focus on. But ultimately, it starts with school at that age. So that's what I really just harp on for them and listening to their parents.
Yeah. Man, I gotta say what you're doing is really inspiring, because it'd be a lot easier probably to just hide away from everyone and do it. But to take this and be like, I'm going to take this head on. I'm going to answer tough questions. I'm going to, and I'm going to talk about something that's heartbreaking and terrible and tragic, and try to turn it into something positive. I respect that a lot, man. I respected you a ton as a player. I always appreciated your time and certainly do today, man. Thanks for coming on the show. Really appreciate it, and best of luck with everything.
I appreciate you, brother.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. This time tomorrow, we'll be steaming towards another Women's World Cup game for the U.S. Women's National Team. 9 o'clock tomorrow night, they take on the Netherlands. I think yesterday I mistakenly said Norway. Sorry, wrong European country. The Netherlands tomorrow night, 9 o'clock. And at this time tomorrow on the show, we will be previewing it with the help of Lena Solano from the Washington Spirit. So how about that? How you like them apples? We got a professional soccer player out here getting ready to score goals herself on Friday at home against Gotham, helping us prepare for the U.S. Women's National Team and the Netherlands. That at 6:30 tomorrow here on the old radio show. And then the Spirit co-hosting a watch party. If you want to check it out, the one on, Friday night was insane at the Bullpen. So if you want a great place to watch the game, you can probably go to pretty much any sports bar in D.C. Watch the game with hundreds of your closest friends. But if you want to go up near 1,000, may I recommend the Bullpen with the Spirit and company on Wednesday night. So Lena joins us tomorrow. Right now, though, back to the gridiron. Ron Rivera hosted his season opening press conference earlier today. If you missed it, we carried it all live for you here on the Team 980. So you can rewind and listen in the free Odyssey app and on our YouTube stream. But wanted to play a couple of the most interesting football-adjacent bites. We played some of the ownership stuff earlier as well. But how does Rivera feel about his roster heading into training camp? And are there any areas that specifically he knows he wants to improve said roster?
I think we feel very comfortable going in. I really do. I think we all have liked what we've done. There are some positions that guys have to grow and mature in. Most notably the quarterback position, with how Sam has worked and how Jacoby has worked. I think we feel very comfortable with those guys. We like who they are. We like the development and growth. We'll be watching that one obviously very closely. And just as positions mature, a couple of young offensive linemen that got to mature, that got opportunities. Both Sam Cosme has a big opportunity to really solidify himself at guard for us. Sadiq Charles has a chance to really truly solidify himself at guard. So those will be a couple positions that we watch. The continued growth and development of our young secondary. We've got one senior guy out there with Kendall, but those young guys, we need those guys to continue to grow and come through it. I mean, this is a good young football team, which I think is positioned in a good spot.
So I think that leads very nicely into another question we'll get to in a second about kind of the big questions on this football team. But I do think it's important to remember for as many veterans and guys that at this point we know, and it feels like a veteran team because, Allen and Payne and Sweat have been around for a number of years now. And there's guys like Fuller, McLaurin, Curtis Samuel's even been here now going into his third year. And he obviously was not a rookie when he got here. So it feels very veteran, but Sadiq Charles is 24. And he turned 24 like yesterday or earlier this week. This is still a young football team in places. And when you look at guys like Jamin Davis and Sadiq Charles and, obviously we'll see what happens at center with that position. But even if it's Nick Gates, like he's not that old. He's like 27. So I think that there needs to be a little bit of patience with some of these guys because that is the nature of an NFL roster. There's no team that has no questions. Like there's teams that have less questions and teams whose questions are not quite as critical of positions as offensive line, where there's questions seemingly across the board here, and quarterback. So this is not a full swing in the other direction of letting them completely off the hook if there are problems. I think it's pretty easy to say, probably wanted to feel a little better about some of these, maybe some different investment, some different draft capital usage, et cetera, could have helped solidify some of these positions. But there is always, on good teams, going to be positions where young guys step up and things that are questions in training camp become answered in the most affirmative way possible by the time you're midseason. And that's why the best teams are the best teams. That or you're the Chiefs and you have Patrick Mahomes. But even them, Creed Humphrey, their center, it was last year's rookie year, 2 years ago. He's young, super young. He's playing center for Patrick Mahomes in an Andy Reid offense. And he was awesome. So it worked out. They had a ton of receiver questions. I mean, think about it's easy to remember now because all of us just watched Quarterback on Netflix. But remember what the conversations were going into last season about the Chiefs receiving corps. And they won the freaking Super Bowl. So this is the nature of the NFL. There's going to be guys who need to step up, who have not played at the level they'll need to play to win football games. And they do, and you win, or they don't, and you lose, and you look like a buffoon because it's like, well, why didn't you get someone else there? Because there's not enough players to go around. There's not enough funding to go around. There's not the right guy on the board when you come up in the draft sometimes. There's a million of reasons why. But when you look at a guy like Sadiq Charles, who is largely seen as a failure so far in D.C. because he hasn't really gotten on the field, he hasn't been smashing when he's gotten out there, and he's been hurt a ton, and then you remember that he's just turned 24, at least for me, it gives me a little bit more hope. Now, I thought this was, I believe, Scott Abraham's question, and it was a very, very good one from ABC7, of course. But last year, there was this concept of maturity. That was the big challenge for the team. It was Rivera's big question, kind of his ethos going into the year. How quickly can we mature? Can some of these younger players play well? And you saw great answers in guys like Payne, who was in a contract year and played his tail off. Guys like Sweat, who played discipline. And that was, of course, coming off the 2021 season where there was a lot of undisciplined play, specifically on the defensive line, that hurt them immensely. So what is his big question, the overriding ethos going into this year, the thing that remains to be seen? Here's Rivera.
Well, I think more so than anything else is it's going to obviously start with the quarterback position. I mean, that's about as big a question, broad a question as it gets. Has Sam grown and developed enough to help us take the next step? Is Jacoby ready to go and compete? And if he gets that chance, will he take us up to the next level? So, again, it is a big, broad question, but it does start with that position, and that really probably is the biggest thing.
Yep. Don't have a lot to add there. We've spent countless amounts of breath on this position, obviously, all year long. From the time that Howell was named the starter for the Dallas game through free agency when they signed Brissett, through obviously now where we head in and we're rehashing all of the top questions. And we even yesterday did that and said quarterback's not allowed because it's too easy. But going into this season, that is the number one question. And I said this a little earlier in the show, and I'll reiterate it now. They've got to know going into the Baltimore practices. Either they've got to know that it's a competition and whoever wins the Baltimore practices, whoever plays better is your starter, or that Hal has locked it up by then and you do not give Brissett any number one reps. And at that point, if Hal has locked it up, he probably hasn't gotten any number one reps at all, pretty much all camp, except for your standard rotation to, your just-in-case reps, which some teams do and some teams don't. But for Brissett, he can play his tail off, and that puts him in position. If he struggles, then it's just going to go to Hal. And then for Hal, obviously, it's do you show the right trajectory? Are you headed in the right direction? Have you done enough to prove that you're going to be better than Jacoby Brissett or that you already are? And if so, he's the guy. And that comes to Eric Bieniemy, in my opinion. Like, he's got the biggest impact on this. How can he make Sam's job easier and Jacoby's job easier, both with play calls and sequencing, but also coaching the finer details to not just the quarterbacks, but to everyone else on the offense, the type of attention to detail that's been lacking here in the Scott Turner era the last couple of years. But that's not all that Eric Bieniemy brings, as Ron Rivera told the assembled media a little bit earlier today.
Well, first of all, he's a gregarious, big personality. He's very loud, which is kind of cool because it saves me on my voice a little bit. And he's demanding. He's got a good grasp, a good feel for what he does and what he believes in. And he's got a very direct way about him. He's got some credibility, instant credibility, for a couple of reasons. One is, first and foremost, is what he's accomplished in the last 5 seasons. Going to 5 straight AFC Championship games, going to three Super Bowls, winning 2 of them. So that gives him credibility. Second bit is he played a lot like Jack did, like Coach Del Rio did, being around championship teams, being on championship teams. That adds credibility. Doesn't mean he's better than anybody, but he has that credibility. He has that point of view, and players respect that as well. So I think that's going to be very helpful. The fact that my offensive, defensive coordinators are guys that have that kind of pedigree.
I I can't wait till we get into the thick of training camp, Anthony. And those guys have been going at it for, let's say, about 10, 11 days. And Bieniemy and, like, Montez Sweat and Chase Young are chirping. And they're going back. And Bieniemy just, like, pulls a Super Bowl ring out and is like, what now? What now?
I mean, that's going to be crazy. It's also motivation, though.
Yeah.
But he has it.
I mean, that's the thing. He's got it like that. Like, he's going to talk. He's going to yap. The energy is going to be there. I think the competition is healthy. It brings the best out of each other. I think that the way the offense is being coached from both a tempo and a detail standpoint will challenge this defense in a way that iron, in classic iron sharpens iron kind of situation. But there's also just the sheer competitiveness and the fact that when you get a week or week and a half into training camp and you're tired of running into the same guys, you're tired of hearing the same voices. Like, I'm not promoting a big giant fight amongst teammates. I think fights in training camp are the dumbest possible thing. They inevitably happen because of that, because it's hot and people get annoyed and all that kind of stuff. But I am for like 2 steps below fighting in terms of intensity and chirping and getting after it. And then, hugging it out as you walk off the field and saying, let's get after it again tomorrow. Like that to me is fun. That's what makes this stuff great. And I think Bieniemy is going to, let's just say he's going to enhance that.
I think we're going to see some of it over the next 2 days, and it's going to lead up to the pads getting going, and it's going to build for, an exciting training camp for real.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. All right, so tomorrow we'll be out there. Of course, full reaction to day 1 of training camp here on the show. We will have it all day long, and then towards the end of the show here at 6:30, we will bring on Lena Solano from the Washington Spirit, our guest analyst, to preview the Women's World Cup game for the U.S. Women's National Team tomorrow night, their second group stage as they look for their third straight title, their second group stage game, I should say, looking for their third straight title. When we get back here on the Hoffman Show, one more bite from Rivera to kick off Real Things Real People Said into real microphones. Then you'll hear from his boss, Josh Harris, with a pretty funny one-liner on the Adam Schefter podcast. Plus, we'll see what else Anthony found. That's all next here on the Team 980. Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Real quick, one last bite from Ron Rivera before we get to the official start of Real Things Real People Said into Real Microphones. This is a real thing that a real person said into a real microphone. The real person is Ron Rivera. The real microphone was in Ashburn. The real thing he said was this. When asked about analytics, obviously Josh Harris has used a lot of analytics in his past teams and his current teams, I should say, with the Sixers and the Devils and on down the list. So how does Ron Rivera think that ownership change is going to affect his football usage of analytics? I'm going to play Ron's answer first, then I'm going to give my 2 cents.
Well, we've always used analytics. Since I got here, we've been using analytics. I used it when I was in Carolina. Obviously, it's grown even more in the last few years. You know, when we signed Jonathan Allen to an extension, we used analytics. When we did Terry's, it was analytics. Deron Payne's was analytics. We used it when we drafted Emmanuel. And then we look at it and we use it when we game plan. I mean, analytics is nothing new. People have been using it for a long time. It's just really been pushed to the forefront because a lot more people talk about it. But we've done it. We've used it. My conversations with Mr. Harrison, knowing that they use it, they've used it with the Devils, as you mentioned, and the 76ers to help them in their decision-making process. It's one of the elements that you use. You know, you have your scouting department, you got your coaching, and you got your analytics, and you take all three and you combine them, and that helps you come to what you believe are the best decisions. And so we do that. And in listening and talking with Mr. Harris, you know, there's an opportunity for us to continue to grow that department and get those tools really even more so available for us going forward.
So everything Ron says is 100% correct. Like, analytics is just data. Analytics is a fancy term for statistics, right? But what has happened over the course of years, baseball is the easiest one, is that instead of using batting average and being like, oh, this is a very important statistic, you use something like OPS, or, you know, as more data became available, it's like, oh, well, we can look at launch angle, and we can look at bat speed, and we can look at exit velocity. And we can look at all these things, and they can be more predictive and accurately capture how good a player is better than things that we used to use when all we had was basic results to evaluate. And so that is all true what Ron's saying, but the data is only as good as the people interpreting it. And for instance, when Ron banged his fist and the paper and whatever else he was banging on that podium in Chicago last year and talked about, I was the one who used analytics to look to get Carson Wentz, everyone from the analytics world that I would trust to look at analytics said, what the hell were you looking at, man? Because there is no data that suggested that Carson Wentz was going to be a good quarterback in 2022. And so what I hope is that there is an expansion of the analytics department so that the data that they acquire is better and that the people who are interpreting it are better. And that could certainly enhance Ron Rivera's ability to use said data and said analytics better, because I do not think his usage of it over the last couple of years has actually enhanced his decision-making based off of looking back and looking at the results of said decision-making around certain key decisions, from fourth downs and clock management to player acquisition, specifically Wentz, Carson. All right, time for Real Things.
Real things.
We're not gonna be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
All right, Ron's boss had quite the funny response to a question on the Adam Schefter podcast. Good chat between Schefter and Harris. They recorded it at the owners' meetings and then put it out today. So this was technically, I think, the first interview that Harris did, although obviously he's spoken quite a bit since until it was ultimately heard. But Adam asked him, hey, man, you got all these teams, so how are your priorities? And Harris really didn't care for the question in a pretty funny way.
And if I could give you a choice of winning a Vince Lombardi trophy, an NBA championship trophy, or a Stanley Cup, what would be your choice there?
That's like asking, like, which of your fingers do you like best? I'll take them all.
All.
I'll take them all.
I like that so much better than the answer everyone else gives, which is like, that's trying to choose between your kids. Depending on the day, my mother definitely had a favorite kid. And when I was being a jerk, it wasn't me. Just take him. Take him. Her fingers, though, or my fingers or your fingers, Anthony, I don't think I want to pick a favorite finger. I would like to keep all of my fingers. Occasionally, your kids, you might want to punt one off a bridge. That's an Anchorman reference. They did it to a dog. Don't actually punch your kid off a bridge. Please. Okay, we're covered there. But yeah, I found that quite funny. All right, tomorrow, World Cup preview. Lots of football. We'll see you then. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980.
Can Eric